All right, class, this is problem number 13.89 on page 499. I made a video of this already for the PC version. I'm just making the same video using a Mac version of Excel using Megastat. So let me read the problem and we'll go to there. So the problem says a restaurant located in an office building decides to adopt a new strategy for attracting customers to the restaurant. Every week it advertises in a city newspaper. To assess how well the advertising is working, the restaurant owner recorded the weekly gross sales for the 15 weeks after the campaign began and the weekly gross sales for the 24 weeks immediately prior to the campaign. Can the restaurateur conclude that the advertising campaign is successful? All right, so here's the data. Here's how much sales they got for the 15 weeks after, or basically during the campaign, and here's 24 weeks before the campaign. So let's write out a null and alternative hypothesis. So the alternative, what we're trying to prove is something like, the mean of during is greater than the mean of before, right? We want to prove that. The null hypothesis is that nothing interesting is going on, right? The mean of during equals the mean of before. And that's really it, right? So we could rewrite these then. So just call it the mu of D minus the mu of B is equal to 0. So all I did is subtract the mean of before, all right, on both sides. So I can do the same thing here. Mu of D minus the mu of B is greater than 0. So this is a one-tailed test. What tail is it? It's the right tail. How do I know that? Well, the way that this is written, it's a greater than sign, right? Which is, the way I think about this is that it's pointing to the direction of the tail, right? So it's like an arrow, it's pointing to the right, so it's a right tail test. The way I think about this is that if it was a normal distribution, we have a nice pretty bell shaped, right in the middle is going to be 0. And we want to show that the mean of during is so much bigger than the mean of before that it's, if I subtract those two, I'm going to get some number way onto the right side of 0. Excuse me. All right, so not a right trail, but a right tail. All right, so how do we do these problems? Step 1, null and alternative hypothesis, determine if one or two tailed. Step 2, collect some data and get the statistics. So we're going to let Excel do that for us. What we need to do is determine, though, whether or not we should have an equal variance or unequal variance. So in Megastat, the way we do this, we go up, there's a couple ways that you might think about doing this. There's like an F test in here somewhere. You could try to use that, and it's not going to work out right. I don't know if I can even find it, but someone showed it to me once. The one we want, though, is under hypothesis testing, compare two independent groups. So there are actually, in the Excel version and in the notes, there are 3 different versions. We have paired sample t-test, 2 sample t-tests with equal variance, and 2 sample t-tests of unequal variance. Those last 2 are in this compare two independent groups. If it's paired data, then it's right there, paired observation. This is not paired data, during and before. So we're going to do this compare two independent groups. All right, so here's group 1, group 2. So just like we'd expect, just go and find group 1. Here's group 1. You can include the labels, and it will just realize that it's a label. Here is group 2. Hypothesized mean difference is 0. And then our alternative here, we can change this. If we leave it at not equal to, it will just give a 2 sample t-test. We actually want, a greater than, I think. We'll see if this works out right. And then here are our options. We can have a pooled variance or unequal variance. Pooled variance means equal variance, and then unequal is obviously unequal. So here are the 2 versions that we see in the PC version. We'll never do the z-test, so we just ignore that. We do need to check this test for equality of variance. So remember, in the notes, we first have to find whether or not the variances are equal. In Megastat, we just do it all at once. Right, so we're going to check this box, and then it's going to return the value of an f-test. And if the p-value for that f-test is really low, we have to redo this and come back and say unequal variances. But we're going to just assume that there's equal variances to start with. So that's it. That's all there is to it. So let's click on OK. All right, so I did that right. Let's spit something out. First thing, we need to come down and look at this p-value for the f-test on the very bottom. This p-value is actually not right. So you have to divide this in half. Here it is, 0.58. So this is a two-tailed p-value. To get a one-tail, you just divide it in half. So what Excel gives you, the PC version, is the one-tail test. So in the homework and everything, it'll ask for a p-value. You just have to divide this p-value in half, 0.58. So that is not a low p-value. So in which case, we can just assume equal variances, and we are already done. We already did it. So up here is the independent groups with pooled variance, which is what we want. So we can see during we have 5,746, and before it was 5,372. So the difference between those two is right here, 373. We expected 0, but we got 373. We expected 0 because of the null hypothesis. The null hypothesis said there's no difference. We actually got $373 difference. And so we say, well, how far away is that in terms of standard errors? Well, the standard error is 141, and so the standard, that's about 2.64, that's what a t value is, 2.64 standard errors away. So that's pretty far out there. It's getting close to 3 standard errors away. So the p-value is 0.005. So that gives us enough evidence to reject the null and say, actually, there's evidence that the alternative true, which is basically saying, that the advertisement, I think it was advertisement, seems to be affecting the sales, right? In fact, on average, $373 more a week. So we could then ask ourselves, well, are we spending more than this, $373 on our advertising? If we are, then it's probably still not worth doing it. In fact, we can change this hypothesized difference. Instead of 0, we say, well, we want it to be at least $150 more or something, whatever it is we're spending, and we can go and test that. All right, so that's it. So remember a couple things. This megastat is just like the PC version, really. Actually, I think it's a little easier. We're going to use this compare two independent groups if we're doing pooled variance or unequal variance. Which start with the pooled variance. Make sure you have the equality guy checked. If you can leave this to not equal to, and it will always, the alternative here, and will always just give you a two-tailed p-value, right? So figure out which of these is the right one to use, less than or greater than or equal to. In this case, it was greater than because that's how we wrote out our null and alternative hypothesis, our alternative hypothesis. Once we get the results, always come down here for the F test for equality of variance. If the p-value is high, first we have to divide the p-value in half. If it's high, then we can just assume equal variance. If it's low, then we have to go back and do that again, but check unequal variances. That's it. That's all there is to it. All right. See you later.